and begin.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good day, wherever you may find yourself around the world, on the web and on YouTube. My name is Mike Turcano from the Brookings Institution. On behalf of Brookings and our partners at UNICEF's Generation Unlimited program, I'd like to welcome you to the first in a series of online events and webinars exploring topics related to connecting earning to learning. Today we're going to be talking about the use of digital learning and employment records around the world, with a focus on experiences, lessons, and insights from Europe and the Americas. If you're not sure what learning and employment records are, digital educational credentials, you're in the right place to learn from a number of experts who have practical experience around the world in using new technologies to try to unpack, understand, and provide greater opportunities, especially for young people, but really for anyone who are trying to transition from the education sector into the workforce and from one job to another. We'll be happy to accept questions via a few mechanisms. Via email, if you could email events@brookings.edu, that would be great. We'll see those. And we see that a couple of them have already now started to come in. Or if you want to, whatever one does on the formerly known as Twitter X platform, if you could, with hashtag learning to earning, we'll also pick up those questions as well. You know, many organizations and governments have been exploring the uses, of a variety of new technologies to support youth transitioning to employment. And the use of what are now called in some places learning and employment records, in some places called digital micro-credentials. They go by different names in different places. They mean perhaps slightly different things in different places as well. These have been used for a variety of ways and a variety of purposes, with various degrees of success over the last 10 years. The hope is that these types of digital records can enable young people to, do a number of things: to talk about themselves, to articulate different skills and skill sets that they've developed, so that they can be connected to job opportunities, and then so that employers can understand who is out there, who's available to them, a more diverse labor pool, so that there can be a greater opportunity for people to be connected to jobs and to job opportunities. This is an adjunct to or replacement of what we can traditionally call a resume or a CV. But all this is perhaps easier said than done. There is a need for concerted effort around the world, and you're going to hear from a number of examples from such concerted efforts to bring together government, educational institutions, employers, nonprofits, and other members of the private sector to promote the adoption of these sorts of digital records, and to integrate them into existing educational processes and in hiring process. You're going to hear about some of these efforts today. While in many ways the US has pioneered efforts in this area, it is really a global phenomenon, and you're going to hear today, especially from lessons from across the Americas and across Europe. A reminder, you can please pose questions via email to events@brookings.edu or on the former Twitter, now known as X, using the hashtag learning to earning. So on behalf of Brookings and our partners at UNICEF's Generation Unlimited, I'd like to introduce our first speaker today. I'd like to introduce to you Colin Reynolds. Colin is a senior education designer at the Education Design Lab. He's been working for, almost 2 decades as a teacher, as an instructor, as an administrator, and as a consultant. He's been involved in projects Experience U, Last Mile to Hire, and he's well known in the space on advising on projects related to the use of digital learning and employment records, and especially the use of open technology and learning standards to support the use of such records. He was previously the vice president at the Learning Economy Foundation. And I now turn it over to you, Colin, and welcome you to today's discussion.
Thank you, Mike, and greetings, everyone. Excited to share a couple examples of some projects we've been working on in the LER space, and give a little context to to some of the technologies and the ways that we've come alongside partners in this space. So a little bit about Education Design Lab. We are based in the US, now a remote company with a home office still in Washington, D.C. But we are a nonprofit that works with a variety of organizations, uh, both in higher education and from the employer side of this conversation. And we're increasingly working with states and ecosystem level groups as we think about the way that technologies, other design tools can really help to better address affordability, relevance, portability, and visibility in our growing economy. And so the technology is one piece, and I'll certainly talk a bit about the way we support our partners using technology. But really, Education Design Lab is rooted in human-centered design and equity-centered design as we work with partners to address challenges all across the learning to employment pipeline. We do spend a good bit of time working with our post-secondary education partners and learners, and that is increasingly going in both directions. So continuing education for adults and also down into high school with some dual enrollment programs and different opportunities that exist for youth that are looking for what it means to find a career, what it means to have experiences and have those documented along the way. So just to level set, I'd like to share this slide just so that we're all on the same page. But when we say LER, Learning and Employment Record, what is that and what does it mean? One of the partner groups that we work with is the T3 Innovation Network, which is housed in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation's portfolio. And the Learning and Employment Record is a digital record that really is meant to capture all learning experiences and employment experiences wherever they happen. So I appreciate, Mike, you kind of comparing it to the resume. Some call it the resume of the future, but it's this idea that all these achievements are being unlocked and experiences are being had, and we're looking for ways to support learners to collect those achievements in some way to share with opportunity or to help them find opportunity. So in the LER conversation, we really focus on skills visibility. And when we work with partners, we talk about elevating skills and highlighting skills in that learning journey. So for us at the lab, we have a set of micro credentials that we've created around durable skills. So the soft skills, there are a number of different names for them, but we choose durable skills as a way to identify those. And we have a collection of skills, durable skills badges that represent those achievements. And those sit inside of an LER. So an LER is a bigger resume-like tool for individuals that in many cases sits inside a digital wallet or some type of storage tool that is in a larger skills-based ecosystem. So if you think about a digital wallet that you may have on your phone now, that could be a storage place for learning achievements and employment achievements. But the idea is that the humans are really at the center of this work, and individuals need to be able to know how to capture their achievements and share those for opportunities and career navigation. So I mentioned the durable skill micro-credentials that we've created. We have assessment tools and learning modules that go alongside these, but we find these to be critically important in the learning and earning journey. So we think about sort of two sets of skills. You've got your soft or durable skills, and then you've got your technical or industry-specific skills that you're learning along the way. And we see those two as pairing very nicely together in the learning experiences and employment experiences that individuals have and are seeking. So this is an example of some of the work that we do with our higher education partners or continuing education partners. We work with both the learners and the higher ed partners to talk about the experiences that they need to achieve specific industry certifications and be prepared for high need or in need job roles in their area. We also work with employers in that region to identify the skills that are most needed in specific job roles and certain industries. So we want to make sure that what higher education partners are teaching and continuing education learning experiences are being offered align with the skills and the priorities for employers when they're looking to hire and develop talent. So this is a sample of what we call micro pathways, and this is something that Education Design Lab does with community college partners all across the U.S. And we'll continue this work and growing at a very rapid rate because right now there's a huge need for non-degree programs, non-credit, sometimes credit bearing and sometimes degree programs, but most micro pathways are non-degree programs and they're developed directly with the continuing education providers. So what does this have to do with learning and employment records? Well, when you have a set of experiences that need to be documented, many of these are maybe outside the traditional realm of education. So if you think of the four walls of a school and credit courses and the skills that are being developed there are many experiences that are happening that are often not credit bearing, or maybe somebody has employment experiences that they acquired some skills and they need to document that, and they need to bring that with them as they navigate their career journey. So this is a sample of the LER infrastructure as we talk about it with our partners. And you can see sort of sitting in the middle there is the credential and an issuing platform. These are the conversations that we have with not only continuing education providers, but also increasingly more with employers and other areas where individuals may be earning and learning, but it's not being documented. The credential is really a great way to document those achievements. There are data standards that allow that credential to have rich assessment information attached to it, evidence to support the claims that are made about the skills that they have and the achievements that they've unlocked throughout their career. And a great place to store that is a digital wallet. Increasingly more, we're working with technology providers that have digital wallet solutions that are able to store these digital credentials and then share those digital credentials or help present them in a way that is akin to what we think about as a resume or a CV. So individuals can take the credentials from their wallet, generate some type of visual presentation, verified presentation to help them in their job seeking journey. And in some cases, individuals use these to continue their education opportunities. In many cases, individuals are looking for new jobs and are trying to seek economic mobility through their achievements. So those get presented to an employer, and employers verify this information. And I think that's what is really powerful about the LER ecosystem, is that the digital credentials are actually coded in a way that allows the verification and trust to be transferred onto employers, so that an individual who says they have skills that they've earned through specific experiences, that information can be validated with the LER technology. So this idea of credential registries is increasingly growing, so that the trust comes from an organization. If I were to say I earned a certificate from Google, everyone here would have some frame of reference, I think, on what it means to earn something from an organization like Google. Well, there are education providers and employers all over the world who would like to have that same level of trust built into the experiences and learning opportunities that they provide. So I'm going to transition to another initiative that we're working on. That everything I've shared to this point is about learning now and moving forward. This project that we're engaged in with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation and the T3 Innovation Network is about past experiences. This goes for anybody who's done any kind of learning or earning or has employment experience that already exists but isn't credentialed. Experience U is really looking at how we might leverage technologies, including AI, to take past experiences, put them into credential format, and allow individuals to take that on their digital learning and earning journey. So this is really focused on this guiding question of how might we get skills-rich, machine actionable LERs into the hands of individuals so they can leverage their experiences for career and economic opportunity. The concept is really the same, but we want to empower individuals who maybe are seeking opportunity but don't have the means to get credential information or get digital badges to represent what they've accomplished. In many cases, we're talking about new majority learners or those who are skilled through alternative routes, maybe have 5-6 years of learning experience, maybe a high school diploma, maybe not, but they have rich learning and earning records that need to be documented digitally. So this concept we threw out and started last year to organizations all across the US. And the basic premise was we want to take existing data and structure it in a way that empowers individual learners of all ages. AI was really powerful in creating LERs at scale for individuals, and we saw sort of three main areas of development for this work. One was around credential mapping. So when we say skills and we talk about skills, what I say as an employer, what you say as an education provider might actually be different. And and a little bit nuanced. Well, we've seen that AI is really powerful at helping to be that translation layer between what I say is a skill and what you might say is a skill. Another area that AI is really powerful is in the extraction of skills and competency information from achievements I have. So if I took a course at a university or at a college that was Econ 101 or English 101, what does that actually mean? AI, by building custom language models, we've seen that AI can make really strong inferences about the skills that you might have achieved in those experiences, and we can credential that and give it to individuals in their wallet to take on their journey. The third area of application for AI in learning and employment records is around chat agents. So I think many of us are probably most well aware of having a dialogue with some sort of AI tool that's helping to get more information and give us information. Well, we've seen the application of that for learning and employment records. If you have a kind of like a coach or a teacher might do in a classroom, when you have a conversation with individuals about what they've done or the skills that they might have practiced or mastered in that process, we saw the ability of AI to extract that sort of skills dialogue from an individual and then credential it. So rooting all of this work in the human personas and the human identities is really core to what Education Design Lab does with our partners. And we really focus on personas or the individuals that are going through and experiencing and really in a lot of cases co-designing solutions with us. Personas are really powerful, not in trying to really extract information about individuals or groups of people, but really provide a baseline of conversation around, hey, when we say we're talking about transitioning youth, what does that actually mean for the design process? And what does that actually mean for the ways that we are incorporating different technologies to support those individuals along their journey? A couple major takeaways here from this work and Experience U, and just a lot of the work that we do around learning and employment records with our partners is rooted in a couple of key insights from these projects. First and foremost, standards underpin everything that we do, and there are interoperable standards that make all of the learning and employment record conversation interoperable. So if you think about the way that you go onto a website or open your internet browser and type in a URL, there are standards that underpin that and make sure that you get to the destination that you're intending to go. Learning and employment records have standards that are very much like that, open global standards established by the World Wide Web Consortium to make sure that the data flows the way it needs to. Individuals in this conversation need to own their data. So if you think about a learner that is transitioning from opportunity in the classroom or an education space to a new career or trying to navigate their career, they need to have ownership over their data and be able to bring that data with them and understand what it says about them and the skills that they possess. We also really promote the support and design of these solutions with the individuals that are using them. So we really don't design in a silo and then throw it at organizations and say, here you go. We get into the weeds with our partners to do this work together because it's critical that the individuals who are using these solutions are part of the design of those solutions. And that last piece about the collaboration and community, really, this is what drives engagement and this is what drives opportunity. We see growth in the regional approach to the implementation of learning and employment records and other solutions, the issuance of credentials along the learning and earning journey. And it's really important that we collaborate together to make sure that solutions that we are implementing really empower not just the people we're working with, but those that are around them and supporting them. So I know that was a lot of information thrown at you during this short presentation, but I think we're prepared for a great discussion, and hopefully that was a strong primer for what learning and employment records are and can be, and just a sample of how we've engaged in the area of LERs with our partners. So I'll turn it back over to Mike.
Yeah, thank you so much, Colin, for that great introduction. And we thought we would start with some U.S. perspective and U.S. experiences because a lot of this got started in the U.S., but it is certainly not an American or U.S. phenomenon. We'd now like to explore what this might mean, how this is starting to look in other parts around the world. We invite people to submit questions to events@brookings.edu via email or on the platform formerly known as Twitter, #learning to earning. I see we already have questions from Washington, D.C., probably maybe a mile from where I'm sitting, but from Winnipeg, from Lagos, from Istanbul, from Islamabad, all around the world. And to help lead our look around the world and our discussion, I'd like to introduce you now to our partner in supporting this series of webinars on learning and employment records. Tom Kay is the Senior Advisor for Global Programs at the Generation Unlimited program at UNICEF. Tom works with governments around the world, private sector partners, working to try to build and scale innovative approaches to support the world's most marginalized 15 to 24-year-olds as they transition, and to provide opportunities for them to transition into decent work. Tom also previously, many folks may know him as the Global Country Engagement Lead at the EdTech Hub. He's worked for the World Bank and for many other places as well. Tom, I turn it over to you to broaden the discussion.
Thanks, Mike. It's a real pleasure to be here with you and all of our panelists and participants today. Thanks, everyone, for their contributions so far and for all the questions that I've seen pouring in. It's really great to be having your online and virtual participation. Thanks also to Colin. That was a really fascinating talk. I really appreciated the way that you started off by level setting for us and positioned LERs in that spectrum, including the micro-credentials as part of a digital wallet and part of the skills-based ecosystem. I also really like the way that you zoomed in on trust and verification around the purpose of LERs. I think that's a really important piece that I'm sure we'll pick up as we continue the conversation. It's now my pleasure to introduce our other panelists. We're joined by two other panelists. The first is Juan Baron, who's a senior economist at the World Bank. Juan specializes in education initiatives Western Central Africa, South Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, as well as other regions. One's really driven to use and generate more and better evidence through a blend of different quantitative and qualitative methods, including impact evaluation. And his work focuses on a variety of different areas, including labour economics, gender equality, and the economics of education. We're also joined by William O'Keefe. William O'Keefe is a policy officer at the European Commission. He's a project manager who works on innovation in education and training. He currently works on the EU's approach to micro-credentials. Previously, he led the development of the Europass framework for the European Commission, including the European framework for digital credentials. So with that and with all of the introductions done, we might now open up with a question. The question we're going to start with is actually for all of our panelists, and it's to build on Colin's great talk so far. It's a bit of a broad one to begin with. So I'm interested in hearing your opinions and your insights on how learning and employment records can really be used to support youth to transition from learning to earning. So we've heard a lot about the technology and the concepts so far in the presentation, but how do we actually practically use these? I might start by asking Juan to provide his contribution, and then we'll move on to the other panelists. Over to you, Juan.
Thank you, Tom. No, thank you very much for the invitation. I try to speak from a lower to middle income country outcomes perspective, and also trying to see or to point out where there are points of entry, some of which have started to being exploited by other institutions. I think at the bank, this is something that has been slow to take on. We're starting very timidly these discussions, but they are very important. So to answer your question, Tom, let me offer three alternatives that were mentioned by Colin, I believe. One is targeted training. I think like having more information about the kind of skills that are needed, the skill gaps, and that would be possible once you have like all this data to really see where the demand and supply of jobs is, especially for youth. The second one that is very important in many developing countries is to try to start recognizing more informal learning programs, of which many universities or schools don't provide, but there are like shorter courses that could be potentially very useful for youth in developing countries. And then the third one, after the pandemic, with all these opportunities that have been created for remote job opportunities, is how we can actually use this kind of approaches on records to really validate and encourage and support employers with hiring the most appropriate skills for the jobs that they need. Let me add three other things that in my opinion are very important and that came already from this discussion. One is that are important for youth. So if I think about my records to show a new employer that I'm ready and that I have the skills to show to perform very well in a job, I will have to go back to Colombia, be in line for hours, pay some money probably, and then I will get like a piece of paper. And then I will have to do that for my high school. I would have to do that for my university. I would have to do that. So I think there is like all the potential for the improved management of the delivery of all those documents, right? So, and that's a waste of opportunity, especially for youth, right? In developing countries when there are lines, even to get your records to show that you have graduated from whatever primary or secondary, right? So I think that freeing time for these citizens becomes like a product of all these architecture that it is very useful for youth. Then in the case of the bank, I see how we could work on these kind of approaches even within projects, right? So identifying or creating records for specific beneficiaries, right? So sometimes and you know, Mike and Tom, sometimes it's even hard to see which beneficiaries of programs exist and how many of them have received the same different programs, right? So I think you could also think about all these issues and how we can do better in terms of management. And then the third one is we also do a lot of capacity building of ministries of education, different stakeholders on different topics. So what I was thinking is why not give more teeth to some of that training, but for example, institutions like the bank and others issuing like micro credentials or some kind of better certification that allows people to show that they have received a training and that this was the training and all the examples that were done. So I just wanted to add those ideas because I do think that the ones that benefit the most are youth who are looking for things to build their CV, but also to convey what they have been showing. I'll stop there. Back to you, Tom.
Thanks, Juan. Really greatly appreciate that. I really like the way that you've made some very concrete suggestions as to how these can be applied, because often when we're talking about technology and cutting edge and new evolutions, it can be a little bit hard to think through the exact use cases. So thanks for going into a little bit of depth there. William, I might pass to you to answer the same question. From your perspective, how do you see LERs being applied to support youth to transition from learning to earning?
Thanks, Tom, and good afternoon to you all from Brussels in Belgium. Really, I would say that when it comes to LERs, we've been at a policy level, this idea of lifelong learning, of people being on career paths, being employable, managing their upskilling and reskilling, this idea of lifelong learning has been there since the 1970s. But I think, in fact, only over maybe the last 7 or 8 years in the advent of learning and education records or LERs or different types of portfolio tools, have we really been able to start to construct a scenario in which people are really able to manage their lifelong learning and manage how they connect their learning to earning. Indeed, we're in a situation now in Europe where actually the unemployment rates aren't that bad. They're relatively good. Really, the number of young people, say from ages 15 to 29, who are not in employment, who are not in education and training, is only around is at 11%. So that's it's an all-time low record in terms of the rates of employment for young people. But nevertheless, our evolving and modernizing labour market isn't getting the people it needs with the skills they need. Employers can't fill vacancies. We need to continue to respond to new and changing dynamics in our labour market that requires people to have the skills and really to upskill and reskill throughout their careers. So now with LERs, we're putting tools, ownership, and opportunities within the hands of learners, within the hands of young people who really, I think, can use the LERs to connect them to choice, They can connect them to learning suggestions, learning opportunities, identify skills gaps. It can connect them to support. They need information. We've already heard mention of the issue around skills needs and understanding where demand is, where employers are recruiting, the constant need and the underdeveloped area of connecting with guidance opportunities and public employment services to be able to help learners, young people and job seekers. So LERs as well can connect you with the support that you need. And then ultimately, I think the LERs as well are key. They achieve a key thing of portability. If you're going to, these young people are going to make one transition, but also multiple transitions throughout their career. They need to be informed transitions, and at all steps, all transitions, they should be able to take their learning with them, take their evidence, take the digital credentials, their micro credentials, and have a record of their achievements that they can demonstrate their employability and adaptability and relevance for new opportunities. So this is an idea that we've been building through the Commission portfolio tool, Europass, which is an example of an LER that the Commission has developed over the last number of years. And it really is an illustration of that point and the potential of really enabling lifelong learning. And I think ultimately this is kind of the key first step, or the key tool that should be within the arsenal of young people who are trying to, as I say, make that transition from learning to earning.
Thank you so much, William. If we could follow up, Colin, on some of what William just shared, and you talked about the Europass credential that they have, and he talked about what young people should do or what young people can do. What strategies do you see that governments can use to incentivize youth to do exactly some of the things that William just discussed, to obtain, to maintain, and to update these employment records as a support mechanism as they study and as they transition and look for jobs?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike, and want to build on what William offered and really highlight the Europass and some of what the European Union has done in terms of policy and decision making that's helped to really create an infrastructure that allows for portability by implementing specific standards and having some base level requirements for the data structures and the data tools that are being implemented. I think that really enables some incredible opportunity by providing common language. I think that's a big part of the conversation, is making sure that we're aligning our language and aligning our definitions together to make sure that when we say one thing, that it means the same thing across political boundaries and geographic borders. And the Europass has really been a great example of that, and some of the other tools that have come from that. So in the US context, that we see increasingly state level conversations and state level governments getting into the technology and trying to understand what is needed to really power a skills-based economy, and how can that go all the way down to youth who are having learning experiences inside and outside of schools, and what's the best way to support those individuals getting their credentials and their achievements into some sort of portable form that allows them to take that with them from one place to the other. And I think there are a few major transition points for most youth and most continuing learners that are really those key junctures where being able to port your credentials from one system to another would be incredibly powerful for both the individual and the organization that's receiving those credentials. We're talking about technology that has very rich capacity for skills data, and for, kind of like William mentioned, helping an individual navigate their career. The amount of information that can be passed through digital credentials and an individual's wallet is incredibly deep. And so making sense of those credentials and making sense of those accomplishments will help both sides of that conversation. And I think that's really one of the most powerful parts of an LER, is it's able to reflect back to an individual the accomplishments and achievements that they've had in their experiences, which helps them get a better sense of what they're good at and what they're not good at. So I think if governments and policy makers can help to build an infrastructure and help to make recommendations around a technical infrastructure that supports interoperability and portability, that would be a great place to start.
Great, and I think Tom, Tom is in Lusaka in Zambia. I think there was a power cut, but I think Tom is back with us now.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks for all the contributions so far, colleagues. Next question over to you again, Juan. And what I'm interested in understanding a little bit more about is how LERs can help to address skills mismatches. So this has been mentioned a little bit in the initial presentation, and also you touched on it briefly in your response before. But we often have a mismatch in skills that young people have and skills that are required for jobs. So Juan, I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts about how LERs can help to bring these two together a little bit more closely.
Well, I mean, the first one, in my opinion, is by analyzing a lot of the data that these kind of approaches generates, right? So if you have employers demanding specific skills, and then you know the kind of skills that exist in the labor market, that only that mapping really helps you identify like big issues, right? So only that. And building on that is where like governments, NGOs, multilaterals, other investment banks, and other development institutions can target skill development programs, right? So, and then the third one I would add is how it could really make especially the micro-credentialing as part of this ecosystem can actually respond to the skill gaps that are identified, right? So sometimes I don't need an economist to do some specific kind of analysis. I need someone who knows how to interpret data and can write well, right? So I think that fractioning of those certifications that in the past were very general, I think help the labor markets, help people make people and governments make better investments on the kind of skills, specific skills that are needed. So I think that all that contributes to filling those skill mismatches that you were discussing. And one of the big issues that we have in development is just trying to measure the skill mismatch, right? So that's the first step. And that's the way we do it. We do surveys, we interview like employers, then we go and try to figure out the kind of programs that exist. But it's always very imperfect. If we had like a lot of this information already standardized and available from demand and supply sides, that all that information will send better signals to the people who make the decision investments, like citizens and governments. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Juan. If we may turn to William before we go to questions from the audience around the world, and thank you again for sending those along to us at events@brookings.edu and #learning2earning on Twitter. William, Juan mentioned some specific things that can be done to address the skills mismatch. What do you see from your perspective sitting in Brussels and looking across Europe? What sort of support do countries need as they think about supporting and implementing these types of innovations and these types of initiatives from a country perspective? What do policymakers need to think about and do?
Yeah, it needs to come from top and grassroots level. We see here my role as a policymaker, us having an important role in taking the fear factor out of all this, in particular when it comes to the traditional structures around education and training, and really this perspective on lifelong learning and employability, and even the idea of connecting learning with earning. There are traditional perspectives around education and training, traditional degrees, institutions, and they're slowly adapting, and it really has. I've seen it most notably with the advent of micro-credentials over the last 3 to 4 years, post-COVID. There has been this shift in culture, this shift in thinking, which is slowly happening. So we see that we have 2 roles to play, that we need to make sure this language is featuring in our policy and in the initiatives led by the Commission. So we're kind of, doing piecemeal steps. Like when we talk about qualifications and projects to support development of qualifications, we now say qualifications, credentials, and including micro-credentials. So changing the language, changing the way that we talk about these different types of initiatives, because ultimately what we're trying to enable is a culture change. We've talked about the idea of lifelong learning being well established, but it isn't always a reality, or hasn't become a reality because of this, slow pace of change in our culture and the way that we talk about these things. So we need to really be instrumental in the language and the way we talk about the world of learning and indeed earning. Then also today's meeting, all the other speakers on this panel, they're all innovators. They're all trying to work to be inclusive. And it really is about giving a voice and highlighting the work that's going on in these innovative and inspiring projects. Certainly supporting them, offering incentives and funding, and this is all available through EU funding instruments like Erasmus Plus to enable this, and then also make sure that there's visibility and we're connecting all these projects, there's mutual learning, and really that's one of the key things that the Commission does. We are a facilitator. We do enable member states to connect, the experts and projects to connect, so that they are learning from each other. And then we'll emphasize key issues within this cooperation, that it must be more holistic, that this world of learning must connect with the world of active labour market policies and vocational providers, higher education, unions, business. They all need to be part of these discussions. It must be more holistic, and this is what we can enable as well. Then lastly, the key thing is putting in place the infrastructure. There's resources, expense, tools that are key to make this possible. I'm really only going to repeat so many of the things Colin has just said, but with an Irish accent, in terms of the importance of interoperability, the importance of common data models, so that we have key ways and simple ways to exchange information using common or structured language. There's the European approach to digital credentials, so that we can have authentic, instant, fast authentication of qualifications. And we also have a European classification system for classifying different terms around skills in over 30 languages. So this is the key role the Commission can play as well, and us as policymakers, of putting in place these building blocks to enable the easier exchange of information on credentials and on learning. So yeah, this is what I would see as our role.
Thanks, William. That's really fantastic to hear, and I particularly liked where you emphasised the bringing different parties together to learn from and with each other. I think it's a really important facet. We know that education and learning systems are slow to evolve, and I think this has been a problem for many governments around the world. And I think that's only becoming more challenging as technologies like artificial intelligence and newer digital tech helps to drive changes in society. It's quite difficult for the learning to keep up with the needs. And so I think bringing those brains together plays such an important role. Speaking of bringing brains together, we're now going to start passing over some questions from the audience. And thank you again to everybody who's tuned in and who is continuing to send through questions. It's great to see so many of them coming through. The first one is for you, Colin, and it's from David from Winnipeg. And he's interested in understanding how a regulated LER might impact the development of micro-credentials and other online learning resources. And I think you showed that schematic before, the framework of how they all fit together, but does one impact the other? And if so, how does that occur?
Yeah, thanks for the question, David. And he might not know that I grew up about 2.5 hours south of Winnipeg on the Minnesota side. So it's nice to know that the upper Midwest of the Americas is being represented as well. I think that the development of micro-credentials in this conversation it's key in enabling opportunity based on the data that's put inside of them. What do they actually represent, and how does that information gets translated or ported outside of one system to another? So if I'm getting the question, if I'm thinking about the question correctly, it's really designing in a way that allows the achievements from the learning opportunity and the employment experience, whatever it might be. I think we're using those terms pretty interchangeably because we're really talking about experiences that help individuals develop skills and help them develop the tools for them to be successful in a specific job role, or maybe a transitioning to a new job role where their skills will translate very well from one context to another context. And the credential structure really allows the data to represent that. So as an individual is navigating, whether it's career choice or just trying to prove and validate the information about them that's true, the credential structure allows for that. And an LER are by pulling those credentials together helps to create a better, more holistic representation of an individual in their journey and what they might be successful at, and maybe what they might need to improve, or how they might remedy some of the skills that they've developed elsewhere.
Thank you very much, Colin. We'll go now from Southern Canada to a question from Baha in Gaza. Baha, we hope you're well. Our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family. Thinking about this issue of, how young people can articulate their skills and present a more holistic view of their skills, competencies, and experiences. Juan, how can we help support young people as they try to do that, as they try to interrogate their past experience and identify what skills they have? What sort of support can we provide young people to help them along that journey?
I was before I in the preparation for this talk, I was thinking about the same question in a different way, which is, what are the preconditions that we need to have in order for this to work, right? So because once you have like all the different parts, you have the data, you have the ones that issue the credentials, once the systems are in place, then that question becomes like, well, engage as a citizen, right? So just participate look for the credentials of the institutions that you went, right? But I think that those preconditions in many parts of the world don't necessarily exist, right? So, and even William was talking about, talking about micro-credentials, that they started shifting the mindset like 3 or 4 years ago, right? So in many countries, and we could say even middle income countries, not even only low income countries, there is still an issue of digitalization in general, right? So I think that is something that the bank has committed to help countries speed up in all sectors. But as part of those preconditions, one is the technological infrastructure that everyone has talked about here in terms of the micro-credential, but more general. I think the government and institutional support, there needs to be like frameworks and guidelines in general for private sector, but public education institutions could be a good way to start. And even like basic education systems, right? So where the system start changing and some of the requirements start coming up. And then the third one is all the issues that have been discussed that I'm not an expert on, and that is the standardization and integration of all the different parts. I think when that happens, young people have a much better environment to thrive, to actually split some of the or get credit, to call it that way, for the things that they have done in the past, but also for the things that they could do in the future when they don't have like huge amounts of money or huge amounts of time to commit to longer term things. And one of the things that I like about micro-credential is that in many programs that are structured under them can be a split, right? So you don't need to do everything at the same time. You can it becomes a system that is more flexible, that is more where young people can thrive in a much better way. Sorry, I think I kind of answered the question.
I think you answered it well, Juan, and I think that your final comment there about supporting young people to thrive is really what we're focusing on, right? How can we leverage all of these different technologies, but particularly learning and employment records, to support youth to really thrive? We have one final question, and I'm going to actually ask both you and Juan and William to respond on this particular one. It's from Dr. Anne Gennon, and she's asked, how do we translate such systems in largely informal work settings? And in these settings, how do we ensure that young workers and learners actually get these credentials? And I just thought it'd be really interesting to kind of compare and contrast the two different environments that you work in, William and Juan, and get a feel for how that looks in different parts of the world. So I might pass to you, William, first, to give your voice a little bit of a rest, Juan, and then we can have a minute or two from each of you on that. We might then hand over to Mike to begin to wrap us up. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I mean, it's really it goes back to my remarks from the previous round of connecting the worlds of employment and education, and this idea of active labour market policies. And so say that we have initiatives in Europe, say, like called the Pact for Skills, which are collaborations between industry, education and training, social partners, designing in a co-creation type of way skills, training responses, support for learners, support for workers. And it is trying to tackle this key issue of employability and delivering support and services for people during their career, because this is where they need the access to upskilling and reskilling on an ongoing basis. And then as part of the these collaborations and these projects, this is where we introduce the employers and connect employers, say, with the idea of a Europass portfolio per employee, or designing individual learning accounts, or making sure that they're aware that if they are organizing training, in-house training, connecting with HR services, or designing a HR strategy for their workers, that they should be aware of the European approach to micro-credentials, or the lists of learning opportunities that are published on Europass or connected via the member states. So it really is about trying to establish, with a view to this idea of lifelong learning, that the culture of learning should also exist within the workplace, and that really there are multiple types of learning opportunities, learning achievements and outcomes. And we're seeing it already with the, say, the rollout of European digital credentials, that certainly there is uptake amongst the formal education sector, but also, in different scenarios by different organizations for different types of learning achievements, so that we're always giving visibility to skills at different points in people's pathways and their careers. So really, I would say it's key. This would be one of the ultimate objectives of what we're trying to achieve with tools like Europass and this broadened approach to credentials rather than qualifications, that we really highlight the importance of informal learning and learning through work, and using these European tools to identify them.
Brilliant. Thanks, William. Really good to hear that perspective. And I'd love now, Juan, to pass over to you to hear a slightly different insight.
Tom, the question was about informality on the labor market and informality on the acquisition of skills.
So it was about informality of the labour market. So how do we translate these systems in largely informal work settings, and how do we make sure that the youth and the workers get these credentials?
I think the answer from me would be like, we have no idea, right? So in countries where a big chunk of the labor market is informal, which means that a lot of the workers, of people that are trying to make a living, are just like very basic tasks and very basic employment, right? So I do think that trying to bring these kind of systems, what it will bring is a little bit smooth the transition, perhaps, between self-employment and informal employment and wage employment, right? So if you are a worker or youth who drop out of school, but you have managed to, like gain some skills maybe in jobs, and then you manage to certify them in one way or another, maybe that opens up like the possibility for a better quality job in a wage job, right? So in a bigger company or things like that. I think how to achieve that, I think, is the question, and I think that's why we're having these kind of conversations, right? And it was very nice to hear from Colin and from William, because that allows you to see, like, people like me that works with countries all the time, is like, what kind of conversations do we need to start having? And I think I try to support governments starting small, but build quickly, because sometimes there are not like a lot of time. There are like pressures of different kinds. So if we can, for example, start working with universities, perhaps, that have structures that are more established, and start doing the part on the certification of them with micro-credentials, for example. And then employees start seeing that that is a good thing. And then they start demanding that. You start building the environment and the ecosystem, right? I think I'm more skeptical of, especially on developing countries, on trying to do everything at the same time, because then it gets a little bit confusing. So it's better just to split it a little bit and then grow it slowly. I hope I don't, again, I think I just kind of answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juan. And I think you did answer, or at least certainly address the question. And I think one thing we've heard today is that there are common sets of questions around the world, and perhaps there are some common and some very different answers or responses to those questions, depending on context, depending on circumstance, depending on what group we are talking about. It's hoped that this webinar series will and can broaden the conversation, some of the conversations that started a while ago in the United States, and bring in a global audience and sets of global perspectives on not only answers to these questions, but what the questions themselves might and should be. As communities, as families, as people, as employers, as governments, think about ways to promote a transition from learning to earning among various groups, especially groups who need the most support, no matter where they may find themselves in the world. I'd like to thank our speakers today. I'd like to thank Colin. I'd like to thank William. I'd like to thank Juan. I'd like to thank Tom and our partners, Brookings partners at UNICEF's Generation Unlimited program. Julia, I'd like to thank Aaron and Sopiko and the whole Brookings technology team here, as well as Sean. As mentioned, this is the first in a series of conversations about or exploring and exposing the wealth of experience from around the world, some of which may be less visible and less well known to people, around the use of learning and employment records to help aid in the transition from learning to earning. This is a topic that Brookings has written a number of reports about, which are available on the Brookings website. If you search for Brookings LER or Brookings CUE, Center for Universal Education, you'll find some of those. We have a few recent blog posts, for example, and more will be coming, exploring and contextualizing European experience for American audiences and looking at a variety of lessons from governments around the world. We appreciate the few hundred people who are with us today online and on YouTube, and the many more that will join in the long tail as this is made available permanently on the Brookings channel on YouTube. So with that said, I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance and participation today. We look forward, hopefully you will join us for our follow-on session, which will explore lessons and experiences and insights from Asia and Africa. The new date for that webinar will be announced shortly. With that said, thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending time out of your busy day today as we all explore the way that new technologies can be used to help address long-standing, seemingly intractable problems in different parts of the world. Be good and have a good day. Thank you very much.